whilst people are filtering in, this is my name is Asad Rahman. I'm the Executive Director of War on Want and from the Climate Justice Coalition, which brings together the climate justice movements, the labour movement, social and racial justice organisations together. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to this event, which is part of the We Make Tomorrow programme that the Climate Justice Coalition's trade union Caucus is running to build power, to workers' power on climate and the crisis. So by now, everybody's very well used to being on Zoom calls, but we are using Zoom. Please do introduce yourselves and say who you are, where you're from in the chat box. That's great. If you can do that. This event is being recorded and is being live streamed as well. So for anybody who wants not to be on the live stream, you can either just switch off your cameras or change your names. But we will be, it is being broadcast on all of our platforms and is also being recorded for people who couldn't make it this evening. We had hundreds and hundreds of people sign up to this, so we're really looking forward to this evening. This event is going to be held in English, Spanish, Italian and French as a way of enabling language justice so that everyone in the room can participate fully. And to hold this space, of course, that's only been possible to our wonderful team of interpreters for tonight's events. There are 9 of them, and so a huge thank you and appreciation to all of them. If you haven't been on a Zoom call before and you don't know how interpretation works, there is a globe at the bottom of the screen which you can press, and we can tell you the different languages that are available, and you choose your the language you're most comfortable with. Is there another slide, Stu, there? And if you can, make sure you stay on mute. And very kindly on this info, there's an arrow for I accidentally got muted as well at the same time as that. So introduce yourself. There is an arrow towards the chat if you don't know where the chat box is, and then also an arrow to the globe which tells you about interpretation. So you want less from me. Well, as we know, millions of workers and their families are already having their lives and livelihoods affected not only by killer floods, fires and famines, but a global cost of greed crisis that is deepening inequality and amplifying the injustices and inequities that have been baked into our economic systems that deny so many of us the right to live with dignity. This is a part of a series of events we're organising, including not just this evening, but on the 20th of May, our in-person conference in Manchester, where we'll be digging deeper into how rising energy prices, inflation, falling wages and the climate crisis are not only connected, but are being driven by the same systems. As we know, change is now inevitable. We can see it in the struggles of workers, both here in the UK and globally. The only question now is whether we can win the change we want to see and ensure that it's not workers or the poor who will be sacrificed. Winning that change requires us to shape our collective vision, connect the dots between our struggles, tell a very different story, and build the power of our movements at both a national and global level. So I would urge, if your organisation, your workplace, your trade union, your community group isn't a member of the Climate Justice Coalition or a globally part of the global campaign to demand climate justice, I'd urge you to join. We will drop those links into the chat. We have an incredible, an amazing panel of speakers from every corner of the world this evening. And so I'm going to swiftly move on and introduce our first speaker for tonight's event. She actually needs very little introduction for those of you who are based in the UK and were at COP26 Climate Summit. It's Rose Foyer. She's the General Secretary of the Scottish Trade Unions Congress. She's been that since 2020, the first woman to hold that post, a dedicated trade unionist and a climate justice advocate who's been really key to championing the intersectionality of the struggles from both the factory floor to our communities. Over to you, Ros.
Thank you very much, Sad. And good evening from Glasgow to all of you. I'm really delighted to be speaking at this rally that was organised by the Trade Union Caucus of the Climate Justice Coalition, and I'm particularly delighted to be taking part with other international speakers because we know that the challenges facing workers here in Scotland are the same challenges workers are facing right across the world. And when it comes to rising inflation, soaring energy bills, declining pay, or the climate crisis, we know that bad bosses don't stop at any borders, and that their desperate chase for ever more profits is seen by workers worldwide. And it couldn't have been clearer that the system we have right now is actually working against us rather than for us. And we have to face the reality that underpinning the climate, cost of living, and energy price crisis is the relentless profiteering of our global energy companies. Profiteering by companies like Shell, who last week announced profits of £7.6 billion from the first quarter of 2023. Companies like BP, who just days earlier announced profits of £4 billion, a company whose own chief executive officer said it's more cash than we know what to do with. Companies like Iberdrola, who saw profits rise 40% from last year to £1.3 billion. And what do these companies have in common besides their obscene profits? Well, funnily enough, they've all won a lease to develop offshore wind on Scotland's seabed. And as they profit from soaring energy bills, these companies are heralding themselves as the solution. But it's actually their pursuit of profits that is really affecting us in the way that we are. It's that pursuit that's causing the crisis that we face today. So despite this fact, we keep seeing politicians double down in favour of the energy companies. We've got governments that have set out to protect company profits and open up our renewables resources to them even further. And that's creating a real problem for us. We all know where this story ultimately ends. It ends in a race to the bottom for our workers, for our communities, and ultimately for our whole planet. None of these responses solve the multiple crises we face. They are simply entrenching it further. So it's only through us taking ownership and settling the conditions for our own energy system that we can solve these crises. Instead of underwriting energy company profits, what we need to do is bring these companies back into public ownership. Instead of sitting back and watching as global investors trade essential public services back and forth, we need to take ownership to ensure money is always reinvested back in our communities. And instead of bowing to corporate giants by opening emerging renewables industries to deregulation and profiteering, we should be taxing these companies properly and demanding the highest standards for workers and for our environment. We need to be talking about the challenge of transforming our energy system in a way which addresses the climate crisis, the cost of living crisis, and the green jobs crisis all together and all at the same time. So for me, this is not just a challenge to be faced, it's actually an opportunity to be realised by all of us. It's an opportunity for us to build energy systems that are designed to serve us, the people, and work in our collective interests. We could build energy systems that prioritise affordable energy for people worldwide, that turn our renewable resources into quality jobs and community wealth, and that solve the climate crisis at its root for working people everywhere. There's money to make this new energy system happen. It just continues to be held in the hands of those with nothing to gain and everything to lose from our collective power. But people's patience is running out, and there comes a point where only real deeds and real delivery of the kind that make a real difference on the ground will be welcomed by the millions of workers across the world. So we need to not sit back and simply hope that others will step up to the mark. We know that it is workers in their jobs and communities that hold the real power in our economies. And if we organise and build that power, we can change things. So as we recognise that the crises we face are global, let's also recognise that it's in our workplaces and our communities that the solutions to these crises lie. And we're already seeing people organising to realise them. Here in Scotland, we've seen workers at Bifab occupy renewables yards in defence of green jobs. We've seen workers at Rolls-Royce and Shannon develop their own plans to decarbonise their workplace. We've seen joint trade union, community and environmental campaigns across Scotland's largest cities on public transport and on green retrofitting of our housing. These are campaigns that brought together the crisis of falling living standards, of inflation and of climate change, and they've connected them to ordinary working people's everyday concerns. When we organise and stand up together, we can win on pay, on terms and conditions and investment in our services. And as part of that wider struggle, people are waking up and realising that we also need to work together to win back our energy systems for the benefit of our communities and the benefit of working class people across the world. So let's draw inspiration tonight from the experiences shared by all of the speakers here and demonstrate our solidarity by redoubling our efforts to organise and build the power of workers wherever we are. I really look forward to hearing all of the contributions this evening, and thank you to everyone for coming along.
My rookie mistake, speaking when I'm not unmuted. Thank you very much, Ros. Delighted also to have Baba Aya with us. We could see with the COVID pandemic how it shone a spotlight on the inequities within and between countries, and it showed us if we needed to know how critical public services are for our collective well-being. And so delighted that Baba from Public Service International, which is a global trade union federation representing 700 trade unions, representing 30 million workers in 154 countries. Baba is the health and social sector officer, background in labour policies and globalisation. He's been an activist for over 3 decades, fighting for a better world where we have the kind of sustainable development that brightens the lives of many and just not the 1% that Ros was talking about. So over to you, Baba.
Thank you very much, Assad. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Good. Well, first and foremost, I would want to say kudos to the Trade Union Caucus of the Climate Justice Coalition for the We Make Tomorrow program, and express my appreciation. I've been invited to speak here. When Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, said, quote, "The climate crisis is a health crisis," unquote, he actually captured a number of things. First is that we have not just interconnected crises, we have a general eco-social crisis. And he also pointed at the centrality of health to this, and which became very clear with the COVID pandemic, because it's about the web of life, human life and the life on the planet. And as Ros rightly stated, maybe this is what Dr. Tedros didn't add, that it is the same dynamic that puts profit before the people, profit before the planet, that is resulting in this crisis. This crisis is not natural. this crisis is because wealth has been put before health. And as I said, people profit before people. Now, looking at the other side of this dynamic is that it shows that health workers have a key role to play as part of the broader working class to fight to change what is, to fight to reverse the push towards the precipice of extinction that this dynamic is pushing us. And so it is not surprising that we have seen waves of health worker protest and strikes. We were talking in a program, a WHO program, as part of the Global Forum on Human Resource for Health, and someone was saying that we should be talking of an health worker rebellion, and I was like, we actually already have a nascent health worker rebellion, using the armed conflict location and event data project set for 85 countries. In the first year of the pandemic alone, from March 11, 2020 to March 10, 2021, there were 4,913 protests and strikes. This was up from 3,000, just it was up by 62% from 2019 to 2020 for the same period. Using other data sets, and which covers 185 countries, you have actually some 6,500 protests and strikes. Even during the height of the pandemic, the lockdown and all that, you had creative approaches to strikes and protests. Now, the important thing is not just that health workers are fighting, and legitimately so. A good deal of these strikes were for improvement in the working conditions and remuneration of the health workers, because health workers are overworked and underpaid. And you have a lot of clapping, applause, as if you can go to the grocery store and buy bread with claps. Little concretely has been done to improve the lot of health workers. And why is it that you even have understaffed health systems in the first place? One, policies that the neoliberal policies that international financial institutions forced on countries, and also which governments willingly take up. I have said time and again that it is ironic that you have countries and the international system repeatedly telling us that the remedy for the crisis is more of the same concoction that caused the crisis in the first place. Because repeatedly, you find it in 2008, you also find it in 2020 into 2021. Right now, at least 143 countries have started implementing austerity measures, making workers to bear the cost, the burden of the crisis that their for-profit system is generating. It is not so much that there is lack of money. You had 32 new COVID-19 billionaires in this last 2 years. It is that a few people, the 1%, are feeding fat on this, and feeding fat on this in ways and manners that worsen the environmental emergency. So it is not only that workers are fighting back, health workers and other workers. It's also very significant that bridges are being built with communities. Bridges are being built with civil society organizations. Now, enough is not yet, because barely less than 8% of the strikes and protests thus far by health workers have been on the climate crisis and climate emergency. But you are increasingly seeing this, and you are seeing, like in South Africa, health workers being part of the COVID-19 People's Coalition. You are seeing this emerging, and we are entering a period, and that is why a conference like this is of exceeding importance, to help connect the dots, help deepen the process of strengthening the unity of workers. And back to, and I'll be summing up here, we are at a stage now where on even a deeper level, and which the dynamics are pushing us to, we need to go back to one of the headlines from the Battle of Seattle in 1999, which was captured in an headline of the New York Times, where it said, Teamsters and Turtles unite. The environmental movement, the labor movement, strengthening the unity of these to fight that general eco-social crisis that capitalism places before us now, is a challenge towards making a future, making a tomorrow for humankind. The alternative is extinction. Thank you.
Thank you, Baba. Yes, we have to reimagine the 1999, the Seattle, the movement of movements that was created. And sorry, my interpretation has suddenly come on. Our next speaker, with the organization he represents, Leonardis Isa, is the president of CONE, which is the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador. Really, is not only the main indigenous organization in Ecuador, founded back in 1986, I think, but has been instrumental in bringing that vision and joining the dots, both within Ecuador, within the region, and globally. It's often cited as the best organized and most influential indigenous movement in Latin America. Has been fighting, connecting issues such as land and water rights, indigenous rights, opposition to neoliberalism, free trade and extractivism in the dirty energy sector. I'm really delighted that Leonardis has made some time to join us. Over to you, comrade.
Muchas gracias. Un abrazo a todos nuestros hermanos y hermanas a nivel global. Nos es muy importante para nosotros, como la Confederación de Nacionalidades Indígenas del Ecuador, articular en una causa común, en una causa global. Poderles contar la experiencia de lucha desde el Ecuador, desde Latinoamérica, y para poder articular en las iniciativas globales. Creo que es importante determinar el problema localizado en los países de tercer mundo como el nuestro, están configurados alrededor de la crisis del capitalismo. Hay un modelo en decadencia, hay una civilización en decadencia que nos está dejando enormes rezagos en contra de la humanidad, en contra de la vida, en contra del medio ambiente. Ahora nos quieren apaciguar diciendo que hay un cambio político, cuando en términos políticos lo que se tiene que decir, hay una crisis climática. No solo es el cambio climático. O se nos han dicho el problema del cambio climático por el efecto invernadero. Lo que no se ha dicho es que la base del modo de producción capitalista está sobreexplotando las condiciones naturales de la vida y que nos está llevando a una hecatombe mundial. Creo es importante decir como de manera general que el modo de producción capitalista en este momento se sostiene sobre la energía fósil, sobre el petróleo a nivel global. Y esto nos ha dejado millones, miles de millones de toneladas de CO2 que contaminan la vida, que incluso en territorios donde no deberíamos tener posiblemente los efectos, pero lo estamos teniendo. porque el modo de producción no está localizada, es un modo de producción globalizada. Por ello, los efectos que vive el primer mundo, que vive los países de tercer mundo, son absolutamente responsabilidad de este modelo de producción capitalista. Y creo que es importante mirar el problema de fondo, no darnos la vuelta por las ramas. Ahora también se ha dicho sobre la crisis actual, sobre la crisis climática, sobre la crisis económica, sobre la crisis de la civilización. Se pretende cambiar a otro modelo de producción. Y se dice que vamos a cambiar otro modelo de producción, pero sosteniendo el mismo, en este caso, en el cambio que se haría, cambiando a otro tipo de energía, otra fuente de energía. Y entre comillas se las hace llamar las famosas energías limpias. ¿Qué es lo que ha llevado? Aquí quiero profundizar ya en un tema territorial, en este supuesto cambio de energía, este paradigma de la energía fósil a la energía limpia. Resulta que son los mismos territorios que van a sufrir las consecuencias de estas políticas, de este modo de producción capitalista que se sostiene en el extractivismo petrolero, ahora cambiando al modelo de energías limpias sostenidas en el secuestro de las gargantas de los ríos, más importantes en los territorios a nivel continental. Pero también millones de hectáreas para sacar el litio, el aluminio, el cobre, el oro, para supuestamente construir estas otras nuevas formas de energía limpia. O sea, no van a cambiar nada, solo cambian de conceptos para que se arraigue más el problema de la humanidad, el problema de la madre tierra. Y quiero contarles, frente a este problema globalizante, el Ecuador no ha dejado de luchar, pero sobre todo el movimiento indígena del Ecuador. En 1990 nos levantamos, después de despertar más de 500 años, de decir, no somos objetos políticos, no somos animales, sino somos sujetos políticos, conscientes de nuestros derechos, por las cuales demandamos que un Estado colonial se convierta en un Estado plurinacional, que reconozca y respete las formas de vida de los pueblos originarios con más de 6,000 años de historia y civilización. En este escenario, nos ha permitido luchar con las políticas fondomonetaristas, con las políticas neoliberales, donde nuestras burguesías localizadas en el Ecuador han acentuado sobre ese mismo paradigma que está acabando con nuestros territorios. Rápidamente, creo que tengo 1 minuto, 2 minutos, por favor, que me ayuden comunicando. Quiero decirles que el levantamiento del 2019 significó consolidar la unidad del movimiento indígena del Ecuador con su propio conocimiento, con su propia construcción histórica, con su propia realidad, pero sin quedar aislados del margen amplio que es el poder popular. Por ello, el movimiento indígena, la CONAIE, confederada en 3 regiones del país, más de 10,000 comunidades del Ecuador, 15 nacionalidades, 18 pueblos, ha permitido tener la capacidad de movilización organizada, que complementamos con la capacidad de reacción de manera espontánea en la lucha de los ecuatorianos. 2022 ha significado parar con la pretensión del Fondo Monetario Internacional, que bajo sus recomendaciones someten la soberanía, la dignidad y la decisión de los pueblos del Ecuador. En este momento tenemos una crisis institucional, una crisis de legitimidad, y el movimiento indígena del Ecuador con los sectores populares estamos absolutamente convencidos que solo la lucha ha permitido tener los derechos. Por ello decimos, la madre de todos los derechos, de todos los hermanos, de todos los pueblos del mundo, es la lucha como madre de todos los derechos de los pueblos del mundo. Por eso invitamos que podamos ahora poner una causa común, Voy a poner para cerrar mi intervención una causa común que desde los países tercermundistas, en los países, en los territorios de los pueblos indígenas, que en el Ecuador significa más de 3.800.000 hectáreas destinadas para la minería a gran escala. ¿Qué decimos ahora? Si queremos nosotros cuidar la vida, cuidar el agua, cuidar la madre naturaleza y no permitir la crisis climática, debemos pensar en una política de condonación de la deuda externa como mecanismos de cuidado de la madre naturaleza. No puede ser que nuestros gobiernos de turno se comprometen con los organismos internacionales financieros. Resulta que para pagar esas deudas tienen que sacar los materiales preciados, la minería, el petróleo de nuestros territorios para pagar a las multilaterales. Por ello, decimos que una condición justa, equitativa, como un mecanismo de reparación a toda la contaminación de este modelo de producción capitalista, debemos demandar a nivel global que los países del norte deben garantizar la condonación de la deuda externa que más está empobreciendo, en donde tenemos los territorios salvados, la selva, el páramo, el agua, para garantizar la vida para la humanidad. Muchas gracias por el espacio que me han permitido transmitir nuestras ideas.
Thank you very much, Brother Leonidas. Always so insightful and absolutely right that our fight for a just transition has to be a post-extractive fight. It can't be built on the same logic of exploitation and extraction. We have to guarantee the people of the global south the right to be able to live in dignity, and all of us to be able to live in harmony with our planet, nature, and all of life. And that does mean tackling the architecture of global finance, of debt, trade, tax, the logic of neoliberalism, and also the visions that have come from indigenous movements that have been at the forefront of reimagining a very different world. So really grateful that you have been able to join us. We all know that the fight for the transition can't simply be about deindustrialization as well. We've seen what the reality of that has meant for many communities here in the UK and globally, but there has always been a fight, and you can go all the way back to 1976 with the Lucas Aerospace and the plan by workers to turn that factory to produce socially useful and productive products such as wind turbines, incubators, etc. That fight continues in many, many different countries, and I'm really delighted that we have Dario Salvetti, who's who's an ex-GKN convener in Italy and a member of the Collettivo di Fabbrica. This is a factory which Dario will explain that where the collective has maintained a permanent presence inside the factory after the mass dismissal of workers. And today that collective is campaigning for a socially and ecologically constrained reindustrialization of the plant site, which can defend workers' rights and ensure a just transition for communities both in the global north and the global south. Our platform and the space is over to you, Dario. I'm really delighted that you're able to join us.
Grazie a tutte e tutti.
Sorry, before you start, Dario, I noticed in the chat some people were asking about where the interpretation was. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you usually have a global icon. If you don't have a global icon, there's usually 3 dots which say more. If you hover over that, a little menu opens, including one which says interpretation. If you go to the interpretation one, it will tell you the different languages in which you can, which are available. And if you're English speaking, French, Spanish, whatever, find the suitable channel so that you can hear everybody. Sorry about that for intervening then, Dario. Over back to you.
Grazie a tutte e tutti dell'invito. In 5 minuti non è facile riassumere una lotta che va avanti da 22 mesi. Metterò poi nella chat i riferimenti per essere informati su che cosa succede alla GKN di Firenze. e comunque ci vediamo il 19 a Londra e il 20 a Manchester per chi ci sarà. L'ex GKN di Firenze è un'azienda dell'automotive che eredita la storia della Fiat, dello stabilimento Fiat. Nel 2018 il gruppo viene preso da un fondo finanziario speculativo. Noi immaginavamo che avrebbe potuto chiudere la fabbrica. Per 3 anni lottiamo per ribadire la tenuta occupazionale dello stabilimento, fino a che venerdì 9 luglio 2021 ci dicono di stare a casa per un giorno di permesso. In realtà a metà mattinata riceviamo una mail che ci dice che siamo tutti licenziati e lo stabilimento è chiuso definitivamente. Noi in verità rientriamo nel nostro stabilimento che è casa nostra perché è stato costruito da generazioni e generazioni di operai, uno stabilimento tra l'altro tecnologicamente avanzato dell'automotive, ed entriamo in assemblea permanente, in presidio permanente, e da allora, esattamente oggi, sono 22 mesi di mobilitazione. La prima fase è la fase in cui lottiamo contro licenziamenti in tronco grazie al territorio che insorge insieme a noi a tutti i livelli per difendere quei posti di lavoro, ma anche quando sconfiggiamo i licenziamenti, la proprietà non ci riporta il lavoro. Rimaniamo sospesi in una fabbrica dell'automotive e lì iniziamo a sviluppare una convergenza con le reti ambientaliste, con le reti per la giustizia sociale, perché evidentemente se si lotta per il nostro posto di lavoro, questo posto di lavoro deve appartenere in qualche modo alla collettività e deve essere utile a livello sociale. Quindi sviluppiamo una convergenza tra lotta per i posti di lavoro e lotta per la questione ambientale, e questa convergenza ci porta ad elaborare un piano per sviluppare un polo pubblico della mobilità sostenibile che riconverta le reti dell'automotive verso la produzione di mezzi di trasporto pubblici e gratuiti. Ovviamente lo Stato e il governo non ci ascoltano e invece ci arriva un proprietario nuovo che compra la fabbrica promettendo di portare un altro investitore, ma l'investitore non arriva mai. Noi iniziamo subito a sospettare che sia un trucco per farci perdere tempo e tenerci lì a logorarci, perché voi capite che tenere un'assemblea, un presidio permanente per tutto questo tempo è un sacrificio, e anche in questo caso sopravviviamo grazie alla convergenza con la lotta per la giustizia climatica. Diamo vita a una grossa manifestazione a Firenze dove la nostra lotta si unisce al Global Climate Strike dello scorso 25 marzo 2022 e finalmente si scopre che alla fine probabilmente l'attuale proprietario era solo lì per logorarci e per portarci allo sfinimento, e a quel punto iniziamo la lotta per la riconversione e la reindustrializzazione della fabbrica dal basso. Il nostro comitato tecnico scientifico solidale, noi siamo operai metalmeccanici, ma nel frattempo sviluppiamo la convergenza con i ricercatori e le ricercatrici universitarie più avanzate che lottano a loro volta per un'istruzione in un'università pubblica. Iniziamo a sviluppare un piano di produzione di cargo bike, di pannelli fotovoltaici, di batterie, senza però l'estrattivismo, senza l'uso di terre rare, di litio, silicio e cobalto, sfidando il settore dell'automotive proprio sul terreno della riconversione che loro hanno usato demagogicamente per giustificare il nostro licenziamento, dicendo che si perdevano posti di lavoro per via della transizione verso l'auto elettrica, che è in realtà solo una piccolissima parte della transizione ecologica, perché la sostituzione di motori endotermici con milioni di veicoli individuali elettrici in realtà in ultima analisi è semplicemente un portare il problema su un altro piano dal punto di vista sociale ed ecologico. Quando noi tiriamo fuori questo piano di workers buyout, di una cooperativa che possa riprendere la produzione dal basso, il loro attacco diventa feroce. Da 7 mesi non ci pagano lo stipendio, di fatto diventa un licenziamento non scritto, perché senza stipendio noi non possiamo accedere né al sussidio di disoccupazione, né alla cassa integrazione, né ad altre forme di sussidio, e infatti più di 200 lavoratori piano piano devono lasciare la lotta. Siamo ancora 200 e stiamo provando a resistere in tutti i modi, e grazie alle reti di solidarietà internazionale intraprendiamo in questi giorni un crowdfunding che ci porta quasi 160.000 euro come prima parte della capitalizzazione della cooperativa che può portare avanti questa reindustrializzazione dal basso. La Noi sappiamo che la ripartenza di una singola fabbrica dentro il sistema non è la soluzione di per sé, ma sappiamo anche che un'impresa recuperata dal basso dei lavoratori è uno schiaffo morale a uno Stato che non agisce, a una transizione ecologica che è solo dichiarata, a una perdita di posti di lavoro e di precarizzazione del lavoro, ed è uno schiaffo il fatto che questo avvenga non solo con una spinta operaia, ma con una spinta operaia che ritiene la questione ambientale chiave e fondamentale, perché per terminare il mio intervento dico questo: è sbagliato concettuolmente dire che la giustizia climatica deve unirsi alla lotta per la giustizia sociale. Non sono due lotte, sono una lotta sola. Io lavoro per avere vita e la vita non è soltanto il salario fondamentale, il salario è l'aria che respiro, la vita che lascio, la vita che posso vivere, la sessualità, tutto ciò che mi permette di produrmi e riprodurmi socialmente. Ed evidentemente non si può reggere una lotta operaia, i diritti, se contemporaneamente vivi in una società consumistica. E per questo, per esempio, noi riteniamo che tutti i movimenti di critica all'attuale sistema, di critica all'attuale consumo, le reti contadine che lottano per la propria autodeterminazione alimentare, i movimenti ambientali, i movimenti studenteschi, i movimenti ovviamente per la giustizia climatica, di per sé, lasciati soli, possono testimoniare un cambiamento, una protesta, ma soltanto insieme al movimento dei lavoratori possono realmente riscoprire dall'interno quali sono i meccanismi del capitalismo, anche gli stessi meccanismi del greenwashing, non solo i meccanismi dell'economia del fossile, e provare a portarli alla sconfitta. Io non so quanto ancora resisteremo, non so se questo progetto andrà avanti. Per il momento siamo l'assemblea permanente più lunga della storia del movimento operaio organizzato in Italia, e in ogni caso pensiamo che questo piccolo pezzo di storia dimostri che aziende recuperate dal basso, in collaborazione, in convergenza di lotte sociali e climatiche, sono una possibilità concreta non soltanto in Sud America, non soltanto in altri continenti, ma anche nella nostra Europa. Vi ringrazio.
Thank you so much, Dario. You're absolutely right. There is no climate justice without racial justice, workers' justice, economic justice, social justice. And we've heard from our panel of speakers so far about how our transition has to be a connecting, a fight for public services, for living wages, social protection, for energy and food to be seen as public goods within the planetary limits, for land rights. But of course, the transition has also got to guarantee us people some of the other basics, from the right to housing to the right to communication. And our next speakers from Global Labour Justice from East Asia, Valerie Alzaga and Mina Chiang, who have been the Global Labour Justice has been very instrumental in a fight for fishers' rights at sea, the campaign around to win communication infrastructure, and how that has been fundamental to labour rights, and particularly how we transition supply chains and regulate supply chains. And fisheries is a huge one. Their campaign is to regulate over 1,100 vessels, which cover 20,000 fishes, and it's connected to the global campaign to push brands and retailers to engage and facilitate workers and community access to Wi-Fi. We're really delighted to have both of you join us. I don't know, Mina, are you going to go first and then Valerie, or
yes, I will.
Valerie first?
Thank you so much, Assad. Thank you so much, Assad, and brothers and sisters. So wonderful to see all of you here. So as Assad mentioned, today we're going to talk about the struggles and the solutions for the migrant fishermen in Taiwan's fishing industry. So first of all, I'm just going to share a short videos about how it looks like on those fishing vessels. So we are talking about distant water fishing vessel, which means workers are going out for several months at a time, and then for 6 months up to a year in conditions like this. As you can see, big waves, and it's extremely unsafe. Nobody's wearing like safe jackets, life jackets, and many of them get injured. And in Taiwan, in this kind of distant water fishing vessels, we are talking about around 22,000 migrant workers. So they are not Taiwanese, they are migrant workers from Indonesia and Philippines. That also means sometimes they face discriminations and all different kind of struggles. And then when we talk about distant water fishing vessel, it's really like in the opposite of the kind of coastal vessels. That means vessels go out for a few days or a few weeks. And here we are talking about going out for up to a year. And this is an industry with a value of $2 billion US. And on those vessels, that's more than 1,100 workers. Their condition is just, as you can see, like on the vessel itself, but also even beyond that. So for example, in the recruitment process, what happened is a fisherman, maybe from a village of Indonesia, they will be recruited by local agency. And then the Indonesian agency will hand this person also to another Taiwanese mining agencies. And these layers of mining agency creates a struggle that everyone wants to take a cut. And in the end, fishermen who are in debt, who are like in those vessels, even when they face terrible condition, it's very hard for them to leave. That also means when it comes to salaries, the salary rarely goes directly from the vessel owner to the fishermen, but going through all these layers of recruitment agencies. And sometimes what happened in the end, the fishermen, they work there, out there for 6 months at sea. And when they got to the shore, they realized they have never actually received any salaries to their families, and their wives and children just hate them, just like, how can you be so irresponsible and not feeding us? But in reality, they are out there at the sea. There's no way for them to communicate with anybody. They just don't know the situation. And other situations, including, for example, insufficient drinks and waters, and terrible sanitation problems. Some vessels, they don't even have a shower room or toilets. There are situations the fishermen fall into the water just because they are doing some basic needs. There's lack of insufficient ventilation as well. So living quarter is just extremely suffocating, and you can smell the oil and the fuel. And there's lots of accidents, the hooks going through people's body, the eyes, the toes, the legs. The high recruitment fee, as we mentioned, make them in debt. There's wage deduction as well. They will promise, for example, like $500 US per month. In the end, they only receive somewhere around $200, $300 US. There's lots of cases of unilateral termination of contracts. So one of the main problems we identify is that because they are out there at sea, there's no way for them to communicate with the family, their unions, health professionals, state officials. So we realize communication is such a key that because of lack of communication, they are not able to assess all these sea issues, and the unionization rate is extremely low. So what we are promoting here is that to promote use of Wi-Fi as a tool for fishermen to be able to access, to exercise the ILO, International Labour Organization's fundamental rights, including freedom of association, collective bargaining, including the right to health and safety, including no discriminations. So not just Taiwanese vessel crew can use Wi-Fi, but also everyone who are on the vessel, including the access to no forced labor. So that's the reason why we promote this Wi-Fi campaign, that we have been lobbying and publicly campaigning for this Wi-Fi campaign. They will believe that vessel owners can provide to those fishermen. So including, we are organizing together with labor unions in Taiwan. This is a migrant workers union with more than 2,300 Indonesian workers in Taiwan. It's called the Indonesian Seafarers Gathering Forum, or FOSB. And then also together with other NGOs, including Taiwan Association of Human Rights, Stella Maris Kaohsiung, a Catholic organization, Humanity Research Consultancy, Save the People Association, and Global Labor Justice. So the fishermen has been organizing petitions and meeting the delegations and doing actions, including meeting lots of government officials from the very high top ministers to like health ministers to like controlling members to like several different government offices, including also meeting like other allies like religious groups, migrant organizations, trade unions, and industries. And so far, we have also collected more than 100 allies to sign the pledge. So our ask is really to demand the Taiwanese government to make our Wi-Fi a requirement, not just an optional, but a requirement as a policy, as all the vessel owners have to afford that to their fishermen. I will stop here and hand to my colleague Bao to talk about the global angle. Hi, Bao, I guess you are still muted.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, I was caught in the PowerPoint. Yeah, so what is very important about this campaign is that although we have been really pushing, I'm here in Italian, is that right? Or let's see. The campaign has been really at a Taiwanese level, being organized by many different allies in Taiwan to really lobby their own government. And that has been a very effective way to really visibilize this workforce, which has been a very invisible workforce till this moment. I mean, just so you can imagine being isolated for a year or 10 months without talking to anybody, being a captive labor, really. This is kind of like the wet dream of the capitalist system, isn't it? I mean, to have workers in the middle of nowhere with no regulation whatsoever, in very long trips, you know, that before were regulated, so workers could come back. Now it's unregulated, which means workers can be out there. And also that contributes to overfishing, yeah, and illegal fishing as well, and to issues of sustainability and ocean health. So, you know, how this is important because we believe that workers, you know, not only should have the right to organize, but it is the infrastructure that is needed. And the other thing that is important about the campaign is that we're really going global because this industry is global. Although the fish are fish for Taiwanese vessel owners, all that fish is actually bought by multinational corporations that sit all over the world, including the United States and Europe and Japan. And all that fish is making, you know, huge amounts of money and profit on the back of these workers and on the back of the health of our oceans. So what's important now is that, you know, we've taken the campaign global. And by the way, workers should be here speaking themselves, but it's very late in Asia. So this is why we're here, Mina and I. But it's important to know that the workers have been going to different spaces to talk to many governments because the call is for all the governments involved. And also all the corporations and all the layers in between, the value chain themselves, all have a responsibility because they all actually profit. And so it means that we right now have gone to the Boston North American Seafood Expo. And I don't know if you've ever been to these expos, but it's so grotesque, the amount of wealth that is in these expos, yeah, with no one picture, no one presence of workers. So we went to Boston and we made a big action there, and we really kind of brought the fishers' rights right to the middle of this corporate space. And we were also, you know, lobbying the U.S. government to do something as they are supporting labor rights right now with the Biden administration. So that has been a productive space also because Taiwan and the US are right now basically speaking about a trade initiative, and we are pushing on both sides for fishers' rights to be in the middle of it. The last thing I want to say is that we were also in Barcelona for the global market, you know, it's called the seafood market, which is also a huge expo. And there we were able to speak about fishers' rights with other labor partners inside this time, not just outside. And we were also visiting the city of Barcelona, who very much committed to not only looking at their own value chain and their own, basically everything they spend themselves, making sure that is, due diligent, if you will, but also they supported us by really being vocal to say that, this is something that should be done not only at the Taiwanese level, but really by all the corporations benefiting and showing themselves in Barcelona. And we hope that that government is elected on May 28th, because they are not only climate justice focused, but really, really supporting this kind of sector. Our campaign, I'm going to put here a pledge. And if you are, if you would like to support the campaign and the fishers and their families and their communities in getting these rights, the right to Wi-Fi as a way to really exercise the right to organize without repression, which is the other thing, and why we need a lot of international support, is because anybody that stands up, the retaliation and the blacklisting in the seafood sector is very common. So if you stand up, you get deported. If you stand up, you get blacklisted. So for us, it's very important to have international support. And so please, we ask you to join us and to make sure that these workers are, get a chance to win. And also look for us online, both on Facebook. It's basically Wi-Fi now for fishers' rights. And thank you for having us here. And we hope that in the future, we will be also, standing up not only for labor rights, but also for obviously climate justice, which obviously will be affecting all these coastal communities and also this very, very industry. So thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you for making the time to join us. And as you said, absolutely, it's very, very late in Asia at this moment. So our next speaker has had to send a pre-recorded message. Those of you who have been involved in the alter globalization movement will probably know full well the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. It's been an instrumental part in many, many movements. Historically, the trade unions, as you know, in Korea were repressed and banned. Unions came together and have been fighting for not just workers' rights, but for democracy and justice. I'm trying to remember what the slogan of the government was at the time. I think it was growth first, distribution later, of which the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions responded, strike first, bargain later. And they were very effective in using the strike weapon as a weapon for political change to deliver on working conditions and higher wages. And last year, the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions brought together global trade unions from all around the world on to debate and discuss what would a workers-led just transition look like. And so I'm really delighted that Yang Dong-yu, who is the vice president and was the chair of the special committee on climate crisis and the host of this global just transition conference, and as vice president of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, was able to send us a message. He apologizes he wasn't able to join us in person. So I think we have a video lined up. Perfect.
벚꽃 이외에 다른 봄꽃들도 개화 시기가 매년 빨라지고 있습니다. 온실가스의 증가가 일으킨 기후 변화는 지구 온난화를 가속시키고 있으며 탄소 배출량을 줄이지 못한다면 이제는 한국에서 봄꽃을 한겨울에 보게 될 것입니다. 일찍 꽃 피어버린 봄꽃의 아름다운 꽃망울을 통해서 우리의 일상과 삶을 심각하게 위협하는 기후위기가 눈앞에 있다는 참담함을 느끼게 됩니다. 빨라지는 기후 재난을 극복하기 위한 적극적인 실천과 투쟁이 필요한 상황입니다. 노동자가 기후 정의 실현에 앞장서기 위해서 민주노총은 2022년 9월 기후 정의 체제 전환 국제 노조 포럼을 한국에서 성과적으로 실현했습니다. 민주노총과 프랑스 노총, 로자 룩셈부르크 재단이 국제노조 포럼을 공동 주최했고, 우리는 이 행사를 통해서 기후 정의를 위한 노동의 지구적 연대와 체제 전환을 모색하였습니다. 국제노조 포럼의 마지막 날엔 9월 24일 서울에서는 대규모의 시민과 노동자가 참가한 9.24 기후정의 행진이 진행되었습니다. 이날 민주노총 조합은 6,000명이 참가하였고 35,000명의 노동자와 시민들이 함께 대행진에 나서서 기후정의 실현을 위한 목소리를 높였습니다. 9월의 대행진은 한국에서 열린 기후정의 실현을 위한 가장 큰 대중투쟁이었고, 민주노총이 시민들과 함께 그 중심에 섰습니다. 민주노총은 9월 투쟁 이후에도 기후정의 실현을 위한 활동들을 지속적으로 진행하고 있습니다. 민주노총은 한국에서 120만의 조합원을 가진 총연합단체로서 소속 조합에 기후정의 실현을 위한 녹색단체협약을 시행하도록 전 조직적인 방침을 진행하고 있고, 노동조합 현장에서는 사용자와 단체협약을 체결할 때 이를 반영하고 있습니다. 녹색단협을 통해서 기후위기 시대 노동자들의 권리와 활동을 보장하고 노동 중심의 정의로운 산업 전환을 쟁취하고자 합니다. 단위 노조에서도 녹색 단협을 체결하여 긍정적인 성과를 조금씩 만들어 가고 있습니다. 민주노총의 녹색 단협은 기후 정의 실현에 노동자가 앞장서도록 할 것입니다. 지난 3월 11일 후쿠시마 핵발전 사고 12주년을 맞아 전국적인 탈핵 행진이 전개되었습니다. 한국과 일본은 바다를 맞대고 있는 나라입니다. 하지만 일본 정부가 올해 상반기 후쿠시마 방사성 오염수를 바다에 방류할 것을 예고했습니다. 방류수로 인한 피해는 어민의 생존권과 국민의 안전에 심각한 위협을 주고 있음에도 한국 정부는 침묵으로 일관하고 있습니다. 전임 정부가 추진하던 탈원전 정책은 새로운 정부에 들어서서 핵발전 확대로 변경되어 원전으로 인한 위험성이 높아지고 있는 상황입니다. 하여 3월 동안 이것을 반대하는 대규모 행동이 전국 대도시에서 진행되었습니다. 한국 정부가 제1차 국가 탄소 중립 기본 계획을 4월 11일 한국 국무회의에서 의결하였습니다. 이번 정부의 기본 계획은 철저한 시장주의 친자본 기조가 반영되었습니다. 에너지 전환 부분에서 화석 연료 사용을 줄이는 확실한 방법 대신에 기업의 부담을 덜어주기 위해 불확실한 부분인 원자력, 해외 감축, 탄소 포집 저장 등의 감축 의존도를 높여서 산업 부분의 온실가스 감축 목표를 낮춰주는 것에 방점이 찍혀 있습니다. 정부는 탄소 기본 계획을 수립하기 위한 탄소 중립위원회의 구성에서도 기후환경단체, 시민, 노동자들의 참여를 배제하면서 기후위기를 극복하려는 모든 의지와 노력을 포기하였습니다. 한국 정부의 탄소 기본 계획은 기후위기에 대응하는 계획임에도 기후위기를 막지 못하고 가속화하는 계획입니다. 우리는 정부가 탄소 기본 계획을 즉각 폐기하고 탄소 기본 계획을 재수립할 것을 요구하고 있습니다. 자본은 이윤 축적을 위해서 생태 공동체 파괴를 자행하고 있고 우리의 생존의 토대를 무너뜨리고 있습니다. 우리는 민주적이고 생태적이며 공공성을 보장하는 체제를 만들기 위해서 정부의 기후 정책에 반대하는 4월 14일 기후 정의 파업을 정부 청사가 있는 세종시에서 진행하였습니다. 기후 정의가 외면받고 기업의 이윤이 우선시되는 한국 정부의 기후 정책에 경종을 울리기 위해서 하루 파업의 형식으로 시민과 노동자들이 행동하였습니다. 기후 정의 파업은 우리의 일터와 일상을 지키기 위한 사회적 파업으로서 정부의 퇴행적인 기후 정책에 항의하고 기후 정의 실현을 통한 우리의 대안을 알려내는 자리가 되었습니다. 기후 정의 파업에는 전국에서 4,000명이 정부 청사에 모여 진행되었습니다. 작년 9월 기후 정의 행진이 수도에서 휴일에 35,000명이라는 대규모 인파가 모였다는 의미가 있었다면 이번 기후 정의 파업은 평일에 일손을 놓고 파업이라는 형태로 정부에 항의했다는 점에서 그 의의가 있었습니다. 기후 정의 파업의 핵심 요구는 첫째, 에너지 공공성을 강화하여 전체 에너지 수요를 감축하고 시민들의 필수적인 에너지를 탈상품화해서 에너지의 기본권과 주거권을 보장하는 요구를 하였습니다. 둘째, 에너지 기업들의 초과 이윤을 환수하고 공공주도의 재생에너지 전환으로 탈석탄, 탈핵 추진을 요구하였습니다. 셋째, 공공교통의 확충을 통한 기후위기 대응을 촉구하였습니다. 기후위기 당사자들이 주도적으로 참여하는 정의로운 전환의 시작을 요구하였습니다. 다섯째, 생태 파괴를 야기하는 신공항, 케이블카, 산악열차 등의 건설 추진을 중단할 것을 촉구하였습니다. 여섯째, 자본과 결탁한 난개발, 부동산 투기, 그린벨트의 해제의 권한을 지방자치단체로 넘기는 시도를 철회할 것을 요구하였습니다. 올해도 9월에 대규모 기후정의 행동이 한국에서 진행될 것입니다. 민주노총은 대규모 참가를 조직하여 정부의 기후정책을 규탄하고 정의로운 전환을 이뤄내기 위한 활동을 계속할 것입니다. 그리고 내부적으로 조합원들의 기후 정의 교육을 위한 교재 개발을 진행하고 있고 24년에 완성하여 단위 노조에서 활용하도록 할 것입니다. 조합원들의 기후 교육이 활성화되면 기후 정의 운동의 기반도 더욱 확대될 것입니다. 지금까지 민주노총의 기후위기 대응사업과 투쟁 현황을 들어주셔서 감사합니다. 민주노총은 앞으로도 기후 정의 실현을 위한 연대와 투쟁에 적극적으로 나서겠습니다. 투쟁!
As inspiring as ever, I was totally blown away when I met with the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, the amazing work that they are doing in the fight around just transition, really broadening that out, making very central public control of energy, directing their energies towards the ecological and socially just solutions and not the false solutions. Amazing work, and really an industrial base of union, bringing together energy workers and public sector workers and the broader climate justice movement, a real template that we hope we can be replicated all around the world. Amazing set of people. Now, closer to home, of course, we also know, and we've seen the strikes that have been taking place in France, which has also given many of us great amount of hope. Now, some of us probably remember the Yellow Vest protest a few years ago, and that protest started off with a banner which said, the elites worry about the end of the world, we ordinary people worry about the end of the month. And the challenge has always been to be able to connect the fight for economic justice to the fight for ecological justice. And when we look at what's happening in France now around the pension fight, we can begin to see some of that coming together. And one of the unions that has been really central to that connecting has been Sud Solidaire. And we're really delighted to have Baptiste join us from that French union. He's a tech worker who's been active in many of those actions and demonstrations, not only against the pension reform, but has been part of the organization that has been really critical to the battle for water and water at Saint-Solin in March 2023, which I'm sure many of you saw the images of, when up to 30,000 people, workers were demonstrating and faced incredible heavy police repression and violence. So I'm really, really delighted to have Baptiste join us to show us again the power of workers organizing, connecting not just in the factory, at the factory place, but connecting with the communities and building the movement of movements. Baptiste, over to you. Hold on, Baptiste, I think you might be on mute, so you start again. We still can't hear you. I don't know why that is. Apologies, everybody, just a tech hitch. No webinars.
See, can you hear me again? Yeah.
We can hear you again. Perfect.
So I can hear Spanish in my ears, but so thank you for having me, and hello everyone. And thank you for this precious initiative on crucial topics. Nowadays, I wanted to share you pictures during while I'm speaking. It didn't work correctly anyway. So nowadays in my country, things are a bit disorienting. You might have heard about the ongoing struggle against the pension reform, which increases the retirement age by 2 years. In the meantime, the drought in France has persisted. Even during this winter, in some region, people have started to understand the idea of no hearse, no pension, as we say. On the other hand, we are facing a changing regime embodied by the President Emmanuel Macron and his world, linked with a pretty high level of violence and the rise of the far right based on social frustrations. However, we have weak signals of interesting perspectives, but emerging, such as extending the scope of social security to include food, watershed unions, renewing the way we relate. Watershed unions which renew the way we relate to the world, including non-humans and thinking across borders. We have also emerging direct actions and movements like les soulèvements de la terre, the Earth Uprising, and the coalition against the mega basin, which is called the Basin Non Merci. We had the casserolades, pots and pans protests as a form of joyful political harassment against the government, increasing the numbers of people protesting in the streets or the fields dressed in black or blue, popularized the precepts of the Black Bloc, increasing the union membership numbers, which until recently were historically in decline. So all of this makes like a new perspective in France, and all of this crystallized recently in fight for over water. In the region of Sainte-Soline, it's about 500 kilometers south of Paris, in the countryside. The agro industry, helped by tons of public subsidies, is building mega basins over the major wetlands of the continent. This agro industry, is trying to spread this idea around the country. So mega basins are infrastructures which to take the water underground during winter, to put it in kind of mega pools, stocking enough water for the need of, for instance, for one mega pool, 15,000 people over a year, which some places doubles the needs of the local human population on the territory. So they aim to provide irrigation of crops in the summer, but a scientific consensus is emerging qualifying this as maladaptation. Excess of water is never wasted, as they say. A water table that overflows creates rivers and life. But the government sticks to the idea that it is always right and that agro industry is a friend. So following its loss of legitimacy, this government responds massively by sending police and marching or anymore. So on last March, the 25th, just after the government's authoritarian decision to adopt the pension reform without a vote, this famous 49-3 law in France, we appeared again in Sainte-Soline. Last time was in October. We were about 7,000 people. And we cut through police roadblocks, and go through their grenades to reach this mega basin and its pumps and pipes. So this time we were in March. Last time was in October. This time in March we were about 25,000 to 30,000 marching in a prohibited demo in a red zone, surrounded by police who were giving fines to any car caught driving through, and so on. This time, restriction. Sorry. So yeah, sorry, I had a small bug. This time we surrounded the construction site without an issue compared to last October. But the police was waiting for us inside this 1.5 kilometer of perimeter black zone. They were all around it with police trucks, buses, water cannons, light armored vehicles, and 3,200 heavily armed and protected policemen. And then we fought. It was uneven, and they used every possible weapon against us, mainly 5,000 powerful explosive stun grenades full of tear gas to keep us away within 2 hours of protest. And to protect what? Just to protect an empty hole of ground, because there was nothing in this hole. It resulted in a mountain of psychological scars, 100 wounded friends, including more than 40 seriously hurt with unrecoverable prognosis. And 40 seriously hurt with unrecoverable scars like disfigurement, loss of mobility or an eye, etc. And 4 of us finished in coma or with a vital prognosis. This was a state crime, a public shame and disaster, the proof of the weakness of the French government. Then everywhere in the streets, slogans and banners and street art emerged all over the country, linking this war for water sharing and the pension reform struggle. Thanks to our friends and comrades across border who came along, crop field battles, as well as street fights have been everywhere referred to as class conflict of water against capitalism. They are killing our comrades in the streets and fields, and this has been decided at the top level of our fight. Policemen have got the permission to aim for the head with non-lethal weapons from our presidency. We all know in France that there will be, I hope we all know, and this is spreading over, there will be no retirement on a burning planet. And because because we hijacked a Spanish slogan for the mega basin struggle. I'll finish with it. We used to say no basaran mas because we don't want any basin anymore. So thanks for listening. Thanks for this organization. And if you've got any question, I'll try to watch and to look at the chat. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Baptiste, and thank you for everybody sticking with us. We're on now onto our last speaker, and I can see in the chat people are putting links. This attack on our civic space, on the right to our movements, is of course happening not just in France, happening globally, but happening here in the UK with the attack on the right to strike, the attack on the right to protest, and the attack on the right to boycott. These are all critical fights for the labour movement, but also for the climate justice movement as well. If we wanted a glimpse of the future, then really we only need to look at Amazon and the blueprint of inequality, poverty, and irreversible climate change. The power of a corporate to deliver the future of work, which will be precarious, which will be risk for our health and safety, which will be union busting, which will be about tax avoidance. Now, many people had said historically, you know, well, it's impossible to organize workers in those sectors. But the labour movement has, and I'm proud to say that also War on Want has been part and parcel of that move, of that campaign to make Amazon pay. So last but not least, we have somebody who really has become a global figure of inspiration for so many. It's Chris Smalls, who's been an American labor organizer. He's known for his role, of course, in leading Amazon workers organization in Staten Island in New York, and he's the president and founder of the Amazon Labor Union since 2021. And it's been great news in the last couple of months that we've also seen the Coventry warehouse, Amazon warehouse in Coventry, unionized by the GMB, and I think it's the start of a massive campaign, not only to make Amazon pay, but to make every Amazon workplace a union workplace as well. So over to you, Chris. Really delighted to have you join us, and as with all of the speakers, all of you inspiring and showing us that through struggle, through collective organizing, we not only resist, but we can transform our workplaces and our societies. Chris.
Hello. How you doing? Thank you for having me. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm sorry, I'm en route to another airport because my life's been on the plane, but always happy to join in solidarity with comrades and unions and organizations from all over the world. It's been amazing. I've been tuning in for the last 30 minutes, and I'm happy to hear about this, not only the fight against Amazon, but the fight in all different industries, because it's all one struggle. No matter what industry we work in, we all have the same goal, and that is absolutely to save our planet. We're fighting not just for ourselves, we're fighting for our future, but most importantly, we're fighting for our children. You know, me being a father of twins, one boy, one girl, 10 years old, they're very intrigued by the fight against Amazon. And they absolutely are. These kids are very much smart and growing up faster than what we like to. And that's probably a gift and a curse, but at the same time, knowing that our fight against these industries, these multi-trillion-dollar industries, are so important and so imperative in the time that we're in now. There's no point of return. So for those who don't know, just to give you a brief background, yes, I am the current president of the Amazon Labor Union, the first union in American history, after we unionized 8,300 members in Staten Island last year. And, you know, that wasn't an easy task. We already know Amazon has spent almost $14.2 million in 1 year alone trying to stop our efforts last year. And they are still spending. They're going to continue to spend. They're going to continue the union bus. As you mentioned, the Coventry workers in the UK. I see some of my comrades here. Solidarity with you. I'll be out there in a few weeks. I'm looking forward to finally meeting some of those workers at the plant, not just at an event, but I want to make sure that I also show up in front of that building to send a powerful message to Amazon that this global movement that we created is not stopping. It's not going anywhere. We're only continuing to grow and expand and reach different spaces in different countries, because we all know Amazon is a worldwide company. So if it's not in your country yet, it is coming. So to prepare ourselves, we already know there's no amount of money in the world that can amount to people and the power of people when we come together. We have proven that with our campaign here in America. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If we could take on Amazon, you could take on anything. You know, we know that Amazon's the most modern day, the most powerful company in modern day history. We know that Jeff Bezos, who is not the CEO, but he's still the majority stakeholder. We know that he's one of the most rich and most powerful people on the planet. And we know that he's a huge contributor to why the climate injustice is where it's at right now, along with Elon Musk, along with Mark Zuckerberg, along with Bill Gates. The list goes on and on. All these billionaires, they all have their hands dirty. And because of these corporations that emit all these emissions, their warehouses, they're not green friendly. And we as workers, we already know they want to move towards automation. We already hear a big rumble about AI technology. We had to stand up and we had to fight back. And the only way we got to do that is collectively by forming our unions and making sure that our voices are heard. And not just that, making sure that these politicians are held accountable. Accountability is everything, and we got to make sure we're holding people in power accountable, especially politicians who claim to stand in solidarity with the working class people. So, you know, I can go on and on about, you know, what we need to do, but I think as organizers and leaders here on the call, I think we all know that we all have to fight right now. This is a global revolution. It may be a slow one, but it damn sure is one. So we just got to continue to stay resilient, stay together, and stand up and fight for our rights, because there is no cavalry coming. We must save ourselves. So I'm thank you for giving me a couple minutes to share my thoughts. I'm happy to be here in solidarity. I will continue to be here in solidarity. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the picket line somewhere across this globe. You have my support 100%. The Amazon Labor Union 100% is behind you. And let's continue to fight the bosses. You know, that's what we have to do. We have to fight the enemy. And the enemy will always be the bosses. So thank you, love and solidarity, y'all. Take care.
Thank you, Chris. And yeah, huge big up to all Amazon workers. And thank you to also Roz, to Leonidas, to Yang, to Valerie, Mina, Dario, Baba, Baptiste. Thank you to all of the incredible interpreters. Sorry about the slight tech hitches there. It can't be a Zoom call without some tech hitches. Also a massive shout out to Stu, Camille and Nick for really doing all the heavy lifting of organizing this together. And of course, all of you, as all of the speakers have said, the history of humanity is one of struggle. Every victory we've ever achieved has come through our collective organizing. This fight that's in front of us can only be won if we collectively organize. We'll urge you all to join your trade unions, urge you all to be part and parcel of this struggle. This is just the first step. There's the conference we're having in Manchester on the 20th of May, which is bringing grassroots workers, including Amazon workers, workers in the fossil fuel sector, workers in the public sector, to how do we build and ensure that this just transition fight is a fight that builds the resilience of our workers and our communities and can transform our societies and our economies and ensure equity and injustice between the global north and the global south. We have a huge fight ahead of us. We have no choice because there is, as Chris said, nobody else coming over the cavalry to save us, only ourselves, and only we can do this. But this is a fight we can fight, and it's a fight we must fight, and it's a fight we can win. So thank you to everybody. Really appreciate everybody, and a huge shout out again to the Climate Justice Coalition. If you're not a member, do join the Climate Justice Coalition. We're stronger together. Thank you again for everybody, and really appreciate solidarity to everybody. and people who asked about links and stuff, we will send an email back out to everybody who signed up with the links for the videos, the links that people put in about their information. So please don't worry about that. There will be like a follow-up email, and again, encourage everybody to please do try and attend the conference on the 20th of May.
Thank you.
Cheers, brothers and sisters, comrades. Bye.
Thanks, Assad. Big thanks to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evenings. I look forward to seeing you, a lot of you in Manchester. Thanks, everyone.
See ya. Bye. Solidarity.
Ciao da Milano, ciao. Solidarity.
Cacifono. Cacifono.
Thank you.
Carbono, Cacifono.
Israel, good to see you here.
Good to see you. Chukwu gozie unu.
This is funny.
Abịakwa Manchester. Okay. Okay, I'll see you. Okay, I know already. I joined about that day.
I'm